So let's go right back to the text. It's already, my goodness, 6:35. So, I'm going to very briefly backtrack just a wee bit, back to the statement, thus by sustaining Mahamudra while mounted on the steed of Shamatha, or serenity. You can find it. It's a very loaded sentence there, and I want to unpack it just a little bit before we move on. As I said, we'll be dense. The next 25 minutes, or maybe a bit longer, will be dense. So by sustaining Mahamudra while mounted on the steed of serenity, which he means here, sustaining Mahamudra, he's talking about Vipashyana. Sustaining Vipashyana, how do you sustain it? By mounting it on Shamatha. When by the power of examination focused on emptiness. So this is, again, Vipashyana entails examination. Shamatha is simply placing the awareness. By the power of an examination focused on emptiness, you obtain concentration or samadhi imbued with the bliss of physical and mental pliancy. Okay, it's a technical term. It's a very important one, actually. As one is actually proceeding on path, and again, that's why I'm teaching, to help people find the path and proceed on it. You might recall, I hope you do, that when you're practicing just straight shamatha, and then along the way you'll get spikes of pliancy, of bliss, and so forth, but then when on that day that you fully achieve shamatha, then a very deep and quite robust shifts takes place in your whole energy system, in your mind, and an unprecedented and sustainable degree of pliancy and bliss of body and mind. Pliancy of body and mind, bliss of body and mind arises. It kind of flows, and then like the milk that comes off the boil and simmers, then you settle down, and then you've achieved shamatha, right? So that's a pliancy and bliss of body and mind that is of the genre of shamatha, within the context of shamatha. Okay? Then you apply that shamatha to the investigation of emptiness, to realize emptiness. And so but now, just instead of attending to the breath, you're attending to emptiness. Okay? If you're in Vipashyana there, and you're asked, what is the object of mindfulness? Emptiness, right? That's what you're attending to and seeking to sustain your focus on with relaxation, stability, and clarity, right? So it's really shamatha on emptiness is now you gain insight into, you encounter the Vipashyana by means of examination, investigation, and so forth, as we've been doing. But then when you identify it, when you know it, when you have some experience of it, then you slide. So it's like a skater that's pumping, and then just glides. So you're pumping with investigation and analysis until you break through the reification. You see the very emptiness of inherent nature of whatever you're attending to, like your mind. And then when that becomes clear, not perfectly clear, but you're getting it enough that you say, yeah, this is it. Then you just mount that on shamatha and you glide, right? And eventually you're going to achieve shamatha on Vipashyana. Okay? And that's the union of shamatha and Vipashyana. And when you achieve shamatha on Vipashyana, then another whole level of pliancy of body and mind and bliss of body and mind arises. Because it's now supercharged, shamatha, because it's completely unified with Vipashyana. And an order of magnitude, far, far greater pliancy, far greater bliss of body and mind arises. And when that occurs, you obtain the warmth stage of the path of application, the second of the 5 paths. Okay? So you have 3 stages on the path of application of accumulation. What are you doing during that time? Well, now this makes it perfectly obvious. On this Mahamudra path, right? You're meditating on emptiness. To access the path, you have to have bodhicitta and you have to have shamatha. To make sure your bodhicitta is genuine, right? Uncontrived. That's enough to get to the path. But then to stabilize in the path and proceed on that Mahayana path of accumulation, you need to meditate on emptiness. As you're meditating and then you fall off, you lose it, you fall into laxity, and then maybe get a bit distracted because this is really challenging. And then you keep on balancing. And so basically you're achieving shamatha all over again, but instead of on a conventional truth, ultimate truth. And when you finish and you've achieved shamatha on Vipashyana, that's the point, says Panchen Lozang, that's when you reach. I'm not going to say obtain, that's when you reach. That's what we'd say in English. You reach the warmth stage of the path of application. There are 4 stages on the second path, the path of application, also called path of preparation and path of joining. So that's a bit of context there. All right, and this is on this Mahamudra path. The next paragraph, I'm not going to read all over again, but very, very succinctly, he maps the 4 yogas of Mahamudra, which is the whole path of Mahamudra. Just there it is, the whole path in the 4 yogas, and he maps these onto the 5 paths, with the first yoga corresponding to the path of accumulation and application. The second one, freedom from elaboration or non-elaboration, corresponding to achieving the path of seeing. The third path, direct realization, non-conceptual realization of emptiness. Because bear in mind, when you have this union of Shamatha Vipashyana on emptiness, on the path of application, it's still veiled by a generic idea. It's an insight. I mean, it's full-fledged Shamatha Vipashyana union, but it's still veiled. It's not an unmediated, non-conceptual realization. It's mediated. It's a conceptual realization. It's way beyond understanding, but it still has these subtle veils. And the path of application, the second path, is to remove those veils. Just like removing veil after veil, subtler and subtler and subtler, until all the veils are gone, and then you prove modern philosophy and psychology wrong, that in fact the mind can operate without being veiled by conceptualization and internal bias and so forth. They don't have to believe that. They can believe whatever they like. They're not studying Aryas. So again, let's be charitable. How would they know? Because everybody they've ever met is operating with a mind that is completely bogged down in and filtered by and biased by mental afflictions and concepts. So why wouldn't he? He's a very smart guy. I know him. Why wouldn't he draw that conclusion? Because all the evidence he has from his fellow Westerners says that's everybody, and they haven't studied Aryas or highly accomplished yogis except for to study their brains and behavior, which means they miss the whole point. And so that's, we just outlined, so there the path of application is to unelaborate your mind, to lift all the veils of conceptual elaboration, and when they're all gone, then you achieve non-elaboration. I said I wouldn't do this, but I'm doing it. The second yoga, and you achieve the first bhumi, which is to say you achieve the Mahayana path of seeing. And then, when you realize appearances and the mind are of one taste, there's one taste, and you see that corresponds to the second through the second through the seventh bhumis, okay? And then finally you have non-meditation. So that was review, but I wanted to focus in a little bit more on this warmth stage of application and get the import of that. I'm going to skip the next section, which I've already read, and we're going to pick up on his way of listing is like that of Gyaltsen, who's a great authority within this Mahamudra tradition. But at this point, do I do it right now? Yeah, no, I'm going to read one paragraph and then we go a little bit more. He's moving into very, very interesting, very delicate topic, and I want to treat it with all the delicacy it requires, because this is, it's just that, very important and very sensitive. Some textual systematizers, scholars who are really trying to make sense of the whole path, say it is unacceptable to equate non-elaboration, that is the second of the 4 yogas, with the first bodhisattva stage, the first Arya Bodhisattva Bhumi, which corresponds to the Mahayana path of seeing. They say that's not right, it's unacceptable. And now an incredibly opaque reference here to a sutra. According to the sutra on the 10 stages, Dasha Bhumika Sutra, it's a sutra on the 10 Arya Bodhisattva Bhumis. The 112 attributes of a Buddha are not present in post-meditation. Well, okay, first of all, 112 attributes, that's easy. It's the 32 major marks, the 80 minor marks. I did the addition. It works. And beyond that, this is decontextualized, and I just thought, can you make any sense of it, Glenn? I really gave it a good shot, and I without going to the sutra, which is about 5,000 pages long. It's part of the Avatammasaka Sutta, and it was just enormous. And so, obviously no chance of looking into it. So I don't know precisely what he means by this, what that is about. They don't show up in post-meditation, but I know exactly what he's getting at. So even without knowing the precise meaning of that quote from the sutras, I know exactly what he's saying by context. And he said, this is contradictory. Okay, what he's saying here is that in the sutras, and then very explicitly, and in great detail, and with the gold standard of authority, in Maitreya's Abhisamaya Alankara, the ornament for higher realization. This is the most definitive presentation of the 5 paths and the 10 bhumis we have anywhere in Mahayana Buddhism. And it's studied extensively in all schools of Tibetan Buddhism, universally regarded as a classic and absolutely authoritative. If you want to know the 5 paths, 10 bhumis, that's the place to go. And when I bailed out of the monastery in India, we were just about to begin 6 years of studying that text. We'd already memorized it. All of us had memorized it. And we recited portions of it every day just to keep it alive. You memorize the whole text before you start studying it. And so we all did that. It was normal, so we all did it, everybody. But the day before that was to start, then I bailed out of the monastery and went up to mountains to meditate. And whether it was a good decision or not, I'm very happy I made it. Because where I was in my practice, so primitive, and I thought I'm about to devote 6 years to developing a precise and incredibly detailed understanding of all of the 5 paths for the Shravakas, the Pratyeka Buddhas, and the Bodhisattvas, all the 5 paths, all the 10 bhumis, and I'm going to know that in meticulous detail because we're going to spend 6 years full-time studying that and debating on it 5 hours a day, having already memorized the root text, which we will now analyze down to the minutiae, and we'll study commentaries and sub-commentaries. And I just looked at this and said, I can't do it. I can't do it. My mind is such a dunghill that for me to spend this much time studying things way up there when I'm way down here, it's just a disconnect. And I just can't do it. And that's when I went to His Holiness and said, I can't do it. I just want to meditate. I want to learn how to achieve the first Mahayana path without having extremely precise understanding of all the ones that come after that. If I can't achieve the first one, then what do I need all that knowledge for? And so I'd like just to go off and practice the 4 applications of mindfulness. And he said, go for it. And so, Namo to my Guru. So some people say that, and so I'm now going to give you the import of this. And that is, when you look at the classic presentations of the first bhumi, what are the signs of having achieved the first bhumi? What are your powers? What is your wisdom? What are your clairvoyance and so forth? Well, they're quite amazing. And what he's getting at here, I know this is the case, is that when Tibetan yogis were achieving the state of non-elaboration, by and large they could not display those abilities that you find described in such precise detail in these most authoritative sutras and the text by Maitreya. So therefore, if you say you've achieved non-elaboration, and you say that's equivalent to the first bhumi, then put up or shut up. Show your stuff. Show that you are actually demonstrating that you have these qualities described in the most authoritative. And if you can't, then it's contradictory to equate the yoga of non-elaboration with this bhumi. You can't do that. It either has those qualities if it doesn't. If it doesn't, then stop saying they're equivalent. This is contradictory. Okay? Well, let's just fill this in a little bit. I've been vague, and I would like not to be vague, because we're now talking about something that means everything to me, and I think it's important to you. Path. So let's just spend a little bit of time here. I'm going to read quickly, but from a source that is absolutely authoritative for the Kagyü tradition, this same tradition. Okay? I'm going to read it quite quickly, and you'll have it all on the internet, but I'm citing from one of the greatest classics of the Kagyü tradition, Gampopa's Jewel Ornament of Liberation. It's a masterpiece. And he's drawing fully from having been very well trained in the whole Lamrim literature of Atisha, one of the greatest pundits of all of Indian Buddhism. He's weaving that together with this extraordinary Mahamudra tradition of Milarepa, Marpa, Naropa, and so forth, and combining these in one text, the integration, right? And so right towards the end of the text, and there are 2 translations, the later one is better, then Gampopa, drawing from his great erudition stemming from Atisha, who himself was a fabulous scholar, then he gives a very concise but very definitive account of the 5 paths and the 10 bhumis. Okay? And so it's in the Kagyü tradition. So this is not Galupas beating up on Kagyupas or anything like that. This is their tradition, right? So here is now direct quote. So just sit back and relax. I'm just going to read through this and see what sinks in. But you can always come back. As I said, this is dense. So, Mahayana Pathic Accumulation from Gampopa's Jewel Ornament Liberation. I won't read all of it, but the quintessence. Verbatim. One who has the Mahayana family cultivates bodhicitta, one who is so inclined, receive teachings from masters, and makes efforts in the virtues until the warmth of wisdom is attained. They say heat, well, it's warmth. I'm going to just for the warmth of wisdom is attained. Now you know what that means. The warmth stage of the Mahayana path of application, right? During this time, prior to achieving the warmth of wisdom, which is the first of 4 stages of the Mahayana path of application, that's what the whole path of accumulation is about, okay? During this time, as you're practicing, receiving teachings and making efforts in virtues, progress is classified in 4 stages: realization, aspiration, great aspiration, and achievement. Why is this called the path of accumulation? Because on it one gathers the accumulations of virtue. It's like charging up your battery in order to become a vessel for the realization of warmth and so on. You're preparing yourself for this profound and profoundly transformative realization of warmth on the Mahayana path of application, and so forth, and then on along the path of application, and then to becoming an Arya Bodhisattva. Therefore, it is called the path of accumulation. These are also called the root virtues. These virtues you're cultivating on the path of accumulation, they're the root virtues which are similar to liberation. So, as before, as below, so above, and all of that, you're finding facsimiles of the qualities of enlightenment itself right there at the ground, which would make sense. At this stage, 12 of the branches of enlightenment are practiced. There are 37 branches of enlightenment, classic Buddhism. The 4 types of mindfulness, 4 applications of mindfulness, 4 types of perfect abandonment, and 4 types of miracle powers. Now you can rest a little bit. Here's something very familiar. The 4 types of mindfulness are sustaining mindfulness of the body, of the feelings, the mind, and phenomena. This is what you practice on the initial stage of the Mahayana path of accumulation. Classic Sutrayana Bodhisattva practice. This is it. You've cultivated your Shamatha and your bodhicitta, and now you seal that with foundational Vipashyana of the 4 applications of mindfulness. These 4 occur during the lesser stage, the initial stage, the small stage of the path of accumulation. But then you need to proceed on, right? And so then to move on to the second stage, the medium stage and the great stage, for the second stage, the 4 types of abandonment are abandoning non-virtues which have been created. So we're not talking about ethics and the purification of the mind. Not allowing new non-virtues to be produced, producing the antidotes, virtues which have not arisen, and allowing those virtues which have arisen to increase. So it's just overall cultivating virtue of the mind by way of wisdom and compassion, powered by Shamatha. Then we'll move on to the great stage of the Mahayana path of accumulation. The 4 feet of miracle powers or miraculous powers are the absorption of strong aspiration, of enthusiasm, the absorption of the mind, absorption of investigation. I'm not going to elaborate, I just wanted to kind of fly by, okay? But this is the time when you're developing very deep samadhi and you're really developing siddhis, the great stage. That's a real siddhi time. Siddhi as in developing extraordinary abilities, paranormal abilities, and so forth. This is the time, big time. And so those 4 occur during the greater stage, the great stage of the Mahayana path of accumulation. Then we have, now very succinctly, then we move right on. Okay, now what's next? Well, next is the warmth stage of the Mahayana path of accumulation. The path of application, I said accumulation, application. The path of accumulation begins after the perfection of the path of accumulation. You can't jump. One has to be completed, and then you move on to the next. It has 4 stages corresponding to the realization of the 4 Noble Truths. Warmth, summit, acceptance, and highest worldly dharma. It's a flyby, real quickly. But what's happening along these 4 stages is you're going back again and again in your realization of emptiness, and it's becoming more and more unveiled, more and more unmediated. And then, of course, during the same time, you're developing your bodhicitta, stronger and stronger and stronger. So why is it called the path of application? Because there one makes an effort to directly realize truth. You're making an effort to gain a non-conceptual, unmediated realization of emptiness. Along these paths, you cultivate five faculties, which you may recall, which turn into 5 powers. So he says, Gampopa says further, during the stages of warmth and maximum warmth, these are the first 2 stages. He calls it maximum warmth, others call it summit. During the first 2 out of the 4 stages of the Mahayana path of application, 5 faculties are cultivated. the faculties of faith, faculty of faith, faculty of enthusiasm, faculty of mindfulness, of samadhi, and of intelligence. You remember those 5? Yeah. So these are the 5 faculties. You're cultivating them, and they turn into the 5 powers when they're empowered. During the stages of patience and highest worldly dharma, patience or acceptance. These are the final 2 stages on the Mahayana path of application. 5 powers are cultivated. They're the power of faith, enthusiasm, mindfulness, samadhi, and the strength of intelligence or wisdom. Okay? So that was that. That was a little flyby over the first 2 paths, right? And now we come to what he's referring to. This is where there's a debate. This is where it gets very delicate, very sensitive, really quickly. And that is, and I'm not going to go further, I'm just going to go to the next stage. Okay, what's it like now? What are your powers? What are your abilities? What are the hallmarks of having achieved the Mahayana path of seeing, achieving the first bhumi? You're an Arya Bodhisattva now. Congratulations. That's really something special. According to the most definitive sources we have in all of Buddhism, what's that like? And here it is. At this bhumi, regarding the obscuration of mental afflictions, all of the 82 mental afflictions that are subject to be purified in the path of insight are purified without remainder. Okay, it's technical, don't get bogged down in that. He's saying there's a whole array, a whole bandwidth of mental afflictions that are now just eradicated, which means they'll never come back. Before then you were just tempering them down, subduing them. Now, he said, they're purified without remainder. You are forever free of a whole bandwidth of mental afflictions. That's kind of a big deal. Regarding the 3 types of imputed obscurations, I've called these speculative. Imputed is not bad, but remember there's acquired obscurations and the connate. He's referring to the acquired. Regarding the 3 types of imputed obscurations to knowledge, all that are like, or they are all like the bark of all that are like the bark of a tree are removed. So 3 types. All these imputed or acquired or speculative obscurations, they're gone. And they're gone forever. I mean, for eternity, you'll never have them back. This is path of seeing. This is Arya path. This is where irreversible change is taking place. I mean, really deep purification is taking place. At this time, the Bodhisattva is free from the 5 fears. We won't label those right. Oh, here it is. The 10 Noble Bhumi Sutra says, as soon as one attains this great joy bhumi, the first bhumi, one is free of fear of not making a living, a pension for eternity, the fear of not getting praise, the fear of death, never again, the fear of rebirth in a lower realm, and I love this one, stage fright in large gatherings. I don't experience that. That's not enough by itself. But this is big. This means, when he says free, never again. Never again, under any circumstances. Fear of death, fear of lower, you're never going to be born in a lower realm again. Never happen. This is quite big. In terms of the distinctive abilities on this first bhumi, the 10 bhumis, the 10 Noble Bhumis Sutra says, that has to be the Dashika Bhuma Sutra, says, a bodhisattva who abides at the bhumi of great joy, first bhumi, makes great exertion for his aspirations, strives very diligently. If he is renounced, then in one moment, he can enter into 100 different types of absorption, 100 samadhis simultaneously, and see 100 Buddhas and be perfectly aware of their blessings. He can move 100 world systems, proceed to 100 different Buddha fields, manifest in 100 different worlds, 100 tulkus simultaneously, and mature 100 different sentient beings. He can abide for 100 kalpas, see the 100 previous kalpas, and the future 100 kalpas. That's an eon. He can open 100 doors of Dharma teaching and manifest 100 manifestation bodies, each with an entourage of 100 bodhisattvas. Sounds pretty impressive. That's the first bhumi. They go up exponentially from there. Second bhumi, third, fourth, they don't go up like twice or 3 times. They go up exponentially. I think it's by order of magnitude. 10 times as you go on. That's the first bhumi. That's baby bhumi. Little bhumi. Okay. So that's classic. There's no debate about this. This is a Kagyü text. Well, the Gelupas say this because they're all going to the same source. So this is Mahayana path of seeing. And then now the criticism here is, we know this is the gold standard. You Kagyü Mahamudra people, you're saying that you've achieved non-elaboration, which means you've achieved that. Good. Show your 100 tulkus at once. Go ahead, just manifest them. Virtual reality. 100 tulkus manifesting at the same time. Go, anytime now. You can start. And if you can't, then what are you saying that for? You're making a false claim. Right? Let's go on a little bit, shall we? Because this is drama. We're not going to stop there, but you can see why that would be reasonable. I mean, here it is, you say that, they're not the same, so stop saying that. Zhang Rinpoche says, the mighty Garuda is complete within the egg. It's a full-fledged bird inside the egg. When freed from the egg shatters open, it flies high in the sky. But it was already a complete Garuda inside the egg. It isn't flying yet, but it's already a Garuda. The attributes of the three Buddha bodies, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Manakaya, are complete in the mind. When the illusory body is destroyed, they arise, these three Buddha bodies arise for the sake of others. Okay, I'm going to give you, I think I've already sent it. Didn't I already send the excerpt from Naked Awareness? Okay, this is very concise, but it's a very delicate and very deep and very important issue, and it's very concise here. Karma Chagmé, in the text that you have, Naked Awareness, really unpacks this in detail. More detail than I've seen anywhere else. What's the debate? What's going on? And what's he getting at here? What he's getting at here is that if you achieve that yoga, the second yoga of non-elaboration, it is equivalent to the first bhumi, even though you may not be able to manifest these qualities. You have them, but you can't manifest them yet. And it's like the Garuda inside the egg can't fly yet, but it's a full-fledged Garuda. You have these qualities in your mind, but he said because of the contamination, the limitations of your body, this illusory body, because of that, maybe you have arthritis, maybe you're old, maybe you've got just a human body, that the body is constraining the manifestation or public display of these abilities you have. So you have them in your mind, but you can't make them public until you've shed the outer, what do they call it, husk of your body. You get into the bardo, and then your mind is now unimpeded, unhusked. And in the bardo, then you can display them. Okay? But this means then it's faith-based. And that, because if you have some yogis that said, I've achieved that, never displays any of those abilities, dies, then all we see is a corpse. Or maybe he stays in tukdam for a while, but we just don't see them. So then, I guess I have to take that on faith. Right? Because he said, this is the deal. That the body, this illusory body, this has to be destroyed, and then they can arise for others after. But you have to get rid of the body. It's containing it, right? So that's the assertion. Well, in this excerpt, I'll tell you exactly where it is. There it is. I have it right here. It's on. If you have the book, but you'll have it in your book, and you'll have it online, and it's pages 210 to 214 in Naked Awareness. And I'm not going to read that. It would be interesting. We don't have time, but it's pretty clear, and you'll see the whole debate there. What Panchen Lozang is referring to here very concisely, it's totally unpacked here, right? And they're giving, and this is going back to, a long time ago, to the Jikten Gombo, back to the 12th and early 13th century. This is the position of the Kagyü schools and the Mahamudra tradition, that this is the way it is, that you can't demonstrate them yet, but they are in your mind. And they're standing by this for the last, 700 years or so. Jikten Gompa, and these are great authorities within the Kagyü tradition that say, no, we're standing by this. You have achieved the first bhumi. No, you can't display those abilities, but you can when you've shed the mortal coil, as they say. All right. So you can see the full presentation of this and the debate from Sakya Pandita in these 5 pages. And I suggest you really look at it. It's very interesting and pretty self-explanatory. But we'll go back just a few more minutes to Panchen Rinpoche's. Now, Panchen Rinpoche is an interesting situation here, because he's not a Kagyupa, and the major criticism is not coming from Gelugpas. There were no Gelugpas back then. This is the 12th century, from the Sakyapa. And so But Panchen Rinpoche's wording here is very, very interesting. So, here it is, Jigten Gumbo. Jigten Gumbo states, and it's opaque here, but if you look at the excerpt from Naked Awareness, you see exactly what he's saying. Jigten Gumbo, great Kagyupa master, 13th century. He says, if you find scriptural support in commentaries that ascertain that, I'll give you a good horse. What is stated in the Sutra on the 10 stages is written with regard to future lives. So what he's saying here is that there are some who say, oh, this is contradictory, this can't be, if you've achieved the first bhumi, then show your stuff, whatever, otherwise stop talking about it. Because if you've got it, you should be able to reveal it. And then he says, show me that. That if you got it, you can necessarily show it right there on the spot. What's wrong with our Garuda analogy? You have them, but you can't display them yet. So that's what he's saying. If you can show me in the sutras, the commentaries, a definitive statement that says, if you've got them, then you can definitely display them right there, show me, and I'll give you a good horse. He kept his horse. And what he's saying here is the Sutra on the 10 stages is written with regard to future lives. If you've achieved it, they're in your mind, become unveiled in the bardo, and in a future life, then you may very well be able to demonstrate them there, right? But then, of course, this opens up an enormous can of worms. And Panchen Rinpoche, and I really checked this translation. Anna, you can see how good the translation is. I changed it completely. Panchen Rinpoche, when he's commenting on this statement by Jigten Gumbo, sticking to his guns and saying, we have achieved it, you just can't display it yet. Panchen Rinpoche says, it seems reasonable that he must say this. That's a very interesting way of phrasing. He's not being sarcastic, he's not refuting him, but he's not affirming him either. It's quite a neutral outside stance. And the issue here is a debate between Sakya Pandita and this Mahamudra lineage. And Sakya Pandita is one of the greatest in the whole history of Tibet. And he's living there, as you can see, in the 13th century, so just slightly senior to the Jigten Gumbo. So I put in the dates in mind. Jigten Gumbo lived from 1143 to 1217, and he's the one that's standing by the Mahamudra position. You've achieved it, you can't display it. Sakya Pandita from 1182 to 1251, so a bit later, about 40 years later. Okay, so but he's referring to the earlier one. The exalted Sapan, Sakya Pandita, says in his reply to the questions of Namkha Bum. Now this is heavy. And I said this is delicate. It's delicate. The Dharma system of the Dikumba, this is one of the lineages of the Mahamudra, the Dikun-Kagyü, Taklungpa, another lineage, and other Mahamudra practitioners. This Dharma system, their way of presenting this, saying you can achieve it but you can't show it, you can claim it but you can't, you can't show it, is not fully in accord with the Tantras and the scriptural collections. Considering that this is not a correct path, do not promote it to others. So Sakya Pandita, a very formidable character, he's saying, all these Kagyupas, they're wrong. Not the case. Don't buy it. If I added a little bit of commentary for myself, he said, look, in the sutras and in the work of Maitreya, it says if you achieve this, this is what you can do. Why do you think he said that? So you could evaluate whether you're there or not. But if you can't demonstrate it, then why should you say there? What was then the point of saying when you've achieved the first bhumi, you can do all of this? If you can't, then what was the point of saying you can? So this really, give it a rest. And when you can manifest in 100 places at once, then good, give us a call. Then we'll take you seriously. But until then, this is just asking for blind faith, and this is a slippery slope. And it is a slippery slope. It is a slippery slope. I won't give any names, but oh man, I've got a whole folder on my computer of spurious, ridiculous claims made among people calling themselves Buddhist about being arhats, of achieving nibbana, of achieving stream entry, first jhana, second, third jhana, fourth jhana, of achieving high states in a stage of completion, being realized Dzogchen masters, realized Mahamudra masters. Oh, the folder just gets bigger and bigger. I call them my bullshit folder, of people making these claims, and then there's no backup. They say, achieve the first jhana in a weekend, some of them. And first jhana, okay, then the gold standard is you can sit for 24 hours straight. Can you do that? No. So it's a slippery slope. people calling themselves bodhisattvas, calling themselves all kinds of stuff. Mostly Westerners, but they're Tibetans too. So this is a slippery slope, right? And then this is delicate. So Panchen Rinpoche, his comment here, I think is wonderful. Although he makes this statement, he's referring to Sakya Pandita, who's really, one has to say, quite disparaging here. Nevertheless, the life stories of Arya beings, when we're getting up to people on very, very high levels of realization, the life stories, or their namtar, transcend the scope of ordinary beings. You can't imagine it. Those with higher realization can understand those with lower realization. Those with lower realization cannot understand. It's outside your pay grade. It's beyond your pay grade, as they say. It's classified information. You don't have security clearance. You can't imagine it. Or, the truth, you can't handle the truth. Yeah, Jack Nicholson did it much better than I. But you can't handle the truth because you can't touch it. There are degrees of realization, you can't touch it, you can't imagine it. It's outside your scope. When you get there, yes, but until then, forget it. You can't. So tread carefully. That's what he's saying, and I really revere what he's saying here. Tread carefully. You're on sacred ground here, and are there bullshitters out there? Are people making false claims? Of course there are. There always have been, even during the time of the Buddha. But tread carefully here, because you're going into an area that you really cannot fathom. So they transcend the scope of ordinary beings. And then, if one rather pompously or arrogantly says, never mind, no, they can't do it, so they're just spouting nonsense. If you develop contempt, disparagement, sectarian rivalry, and so forth, negativity directed to the Dharma and holy beings is most unbearable. Hatred or contempt, let's take contempt, that's a big one. Contempt toward an ordinary person, it's very negative. Just, some ordinary person, you look down and feel total contempt for that person. Maybe speak contemptuously of that person. Definitely negative karma. But then karma, the weight of karma depends not only on what you say and the intensity with which you say it, but it also, the degree of intensity or the magnitude of the karma also hinges on, number one, the mental affliction, how you say it and so forth, but also the object. And if you're focusing, for example, on your mother or father, and you show the same contempt, karma is much heavier. Sorry, but it is. Karmic connection is really strong. If you show gratitude, if you show, virtues, that's very strong. But towards parents, it's a strong connection. And if one's shown contempt to parents, it's heavy karma. So if you develop, of your own free will, a relationship with a guru, Shravakayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, whatever, a guru, and then, come what may, something happens, you lose faith, and then you speak with contempt, disparagement, and so forth, maybe revile the guru. Sorry. Whatever the guru's done, even if what the guru's done is really awful, if you refer to the guru's behavior with contempt, with a mental affliction of contempt, even if the guru's done something really horrendous, sometimes it happens too, but if you refer to that, you look down on the guru with contempt, and it's your guru. Tough luck. Really heavy karma. And let alone if the guru hasn't actually done anything, you just get disillusioned or whatever. That happens too. I've seen people totally lose faith in a guru, where the guru was flawless. It was just purely the mental afflictions. And then they disparage away and think, scot-free, no problem, no faith in karma at all. And they're just digging a deep, deep hole for themselves. It's very tragic. So towards a guru, it's very heavy. Even if you're an ordinary person, if you've established that relationship, it's sacred ground. That great potential for good, great potential for harm. Right? And then we go to Aryas. Well, then same thing. If you have reverence, faith, and so forth, very powerful. View them with contempt, disparage a whole tradition, to disparage one lineage after another of the Mahamudra, including everybody who's in it. Look out! Sakya Madita, you're on your own. You take responsibility for your own works. You're beyond my scope. You're beyond my Sakya Pandita, beyond my pay grade. Beyond my imagination, no security clearance. I can't imagine. So I have nothing to say. He said that, okay, but Alan Wallace has nothing to say. Panchen Rinpoche is saying, be careful. Sakya Madita is one of those great beings, by universal consent. And you'll see in the excerpt from Karma Chagmé, he refers to Sakya Madita with great reverence. Great reverence. He disagrees with him, but with reverence. That's a skill Tibetan yogis and so forth have developed. To strongly disagree with someone and show them respect. Disagree with what they say, show respect for the person. I tried 2 days ago. I don't think I failed entirely. When I was criticizing statements made by people, I was very severe in my criticism of what they said. I did my very best, and it's felt I wasn't trying to put on a pretense or a show. I'm not criticizing any of these people as human beings. I'm criticizing the words. That's where the scalpel is hitting the words, not the people. Right? Try. It's important. I'm trying. Don't always succeed, but I do try. So negativity directed to the Dharma and to holy beings is most unbearable. So I, Chökyi Gyaltsen, make this appeal. I ask that you reject the hateful power of sectarianism and fill yourself with the precious light by which everything is seen as pure. So he's saying, why don't you just give it a rest? I think that's what he's really saying. You can read the whole debate in those 5 pages that I sent to you, or just look in your book. I gave you the pagination. It's interesting. And I would just leave it at that, because I agree with them all. I really do. I agree with them all, and not just being airy-fairy about it. Let's spend a couple more minutes. Dujum Lingpa. 13 of his disciples achieved rainbow body, 1,000 became Vidyadharas by general consensus. He passed away, manifested five tulkus simultaneously by general consensus. One of them was Dujum Rinpoche, who was a layperson, never became a monk, and unanimously voted by all of the greatest Nyingma yogis and scholars and so forth to be their representative for the entire tradition. They wouldn't do that out of whimsy. Okay, that was Dujum Rinpoche. I mean, just awesome. His Holiness said, Dalai Lama said of Dujum Rinpoche, he's the regent of Padmasambhava. That's pretty high praise from the Dalai Lama. So this is Dujum Lingpa, right? And then Dujum Rinpoche. And then Dujum Rinpoche passed away. Now he has 2 incarnations. I've not met either of them, but the one from Tibet is a bit more renowned, a bit more well known. But they're both respected, and there's been no controversy about which is the real one, blah, blah, blah. You had 5 last time. What's the problem with having 2 this time? Come on. But I heard this from so the one that I'm referring to is born in Tibet. He's been to Nepal. He's given the whole Dujum Lingpa cycle of empowerments there. Some of my students were there, and friends of there, and were you there? Yes. Everybody I've heard who met him was just awed by him. A young man, 25 or so, something like that. Yeah, and just awed. Here's a young man, younger than Ursel by quite a number of years, and yet, who cares? An old friend of mine, my generation, said, and she was a student of Dujum Rinpoche, and she said, when I met the tulku, it was like I saw all the wisdom of Dujum Rinpoche there in that young man, just flowing forth. So some of the tulkus, boy, they're genuine, really genuine. So there it is. This is really wonderful news that lineage is being carried on. The new manifestation is really an extraordinary being manifesting that. But why I mention him right now before we head off to dinner is a statement I heard, and I believe it's correct. Hearsay, I have no reason to doubt it. And that is his at least one of his, I think is probably his root lama, Chagya Rinpoche, who lived to 102. Passed away very recently, within the last year or so. Dujum Yangsit, the tulku, would come down to Nepal to receive guidance from him, from this extraordinary yogi, who Dujum Rinpoche himself, the past incarnation, appointed Chagya Rinpoche as his regent of all the lamas there. He appointed my lama, Gyatso Rinpoche, as a representative of all of North America. But when he passed away, his regent, he appointed Chagya Rinpoche, who many regarded as the greatest Dzogchen master alive at his time. So Chagya Rinpoche, this old yogi, spent much of his life in retreat, yogi's yogi. He became the meditation master for the young Dujum Yangsit Rinpoche, right? Now here's what I heard. And if you know this, I can't imagine you know it be false. If you know it be true, I'd like to have a bit more certainty. But it has the ring of truth to my ear. Chagya Rinpoche told the young tulku, who's really not very much in the midst of his training, he's getting full-fledged training of the sutras, of the tantras, of Dzogchen, the Kama, the Dharma, being led in retreats and learning everything he needs to learn. He's having the whole lineage poured into him to carry on this whole Dujum lineage, and of course for the Nyingma tradition as a whole. So he's being groomed to be a great teacher, right? But he's receiving all the training. And what I heard Chagya Rinpoche told him was, he said, addressing the young tulku, he said, although you have a great name, you're the Dujom Yangsit, although you have the great name, you must apply yourself to the training step by step from the foundation up. From the preliminary practices and right on through, all the stages through.
I heard it from his mouth.
From his mouth?
Yeah.
Did I end anything to correct in what I said?
No, he said it.
Okay, as I said, I tried to be careful. I tried. Well, good, and then I know. So, there's volumes there. There's volumes there. That 2 incarnations earlier, he led all these people to enlightenment. His last one, fabulous teacher. This one, he still has to train from the ground up. But look, if he's coming in with everything already, why not just put him on the Dharma throne when he's 3, as soon as he can, speak Tibetan, and just do everything with no training at all? Hey, it's a continuum here. They don't do that. They do that. The greatest tulkus, by and large, with very few exceptions, doesn't matter how great you are, who your predecessor, the Dalai Lama himself, 14th, full Geshe training from the ground up, and had to pass his exams in face of 30,000 people watching him to see how he would do. It was a very public exam. From the ground up, all that training, and then retreats and retreats and retreats. And he's the Dalai Lama, and the same goes for the other great lamas. So if these are great beings from the time they're born, and they already have all these abilities, then what the heck do they need to study all these books for? It seems that the training needs to be there from lifetime to lifetime to keep, bringing it into the present moment. What can I say? It's beyond my pay grade again. I don't know. But these are facts. That he really has every reason to believe this is really the incarnation of Dujum Rinpoche. I mean, it's pretty compelling. And these great yogis confirming this. I mean, if one has no faith, that's fine. I don't care. But if one has faith in this tradition, then this is not a mistake. This is the Tulku of Dujum Rinpoche, the Tulku of Dujum Lingpa, one of the 5. And that said, he has to go through all the training step by step. Right? He's the Garuda already, but all those qualities that he had clearly manifestly achieved in past life, not yet manifested here. That's why he has to go through the training again. Right? There are cases where a tulku is identified in the 40s or the 50s, considerably into the age. I know one. He wasn't identified as a tulku, for very good reason, but he wasn't identified until well into his life. Right? And then there are beings who will seem very ordinary, and then suddenly kaboom, and then they very quickly achieve extremely high realization. And yet, they had that realization there, but it was the Garuda inside the egg. And then conditions come about, and then that which was already there becomes manifest. So it's a delicate area. There's a slippery slope there, where anybody can say anything they like, and make all kinds of preposterous claims. And say, no, I've achieved the 4th jhana, but I can't do that because, well, it's inside. I can't show it. It's private. I've achieved, stage of completion stages in the highest yoga tantra, and but I don't really feel like showing them my, all these extraordinary abilities you have on that level. And the list goes on and on. People, as I said before, people claiming there's one. I'm going to give him a different name. He calls it what? Oh, never mind. It makes me pull my hair out. Just so many spurious claims, bullshit claims. So there is a slippery slope there. Let's be very careful to use the teachings to properly assess where we are on the path. On the one hand, on the other hand, tread lightly. I think that's the message there. The path is so sacred, the very notion of path. I don't really know anything more important than that. I mean, it's the fourth noble truth, after all. The first 2 are where the problem is. The third is a promissory note. And do we actually achieve the nirvana? Do we achieve enlightenment or not? Everything hinges on the 4th, right? Everything. And the 4th ether is authentic or is not authentic. It either works or it doesn't work. And if it works, on the Shravaka path, it purifies you forever and completely from all mental afflictions. And if it's a Mahayana path and you come to the conclusion of it, you're manifestly a perfectly enlightened Buddha. And it's either true or false, and either it's a path or it's not a path. And so to bring all our intelligence, but also all our humility to bear with a passionate yearning, show me the authentic path, show me the authentic path. To follow that, not be misled, but not presume too much. Not presume too much. Because when all is said and done, also what we're able to see as we attend to another person, like His Holiness Dalai Lama, for example, there are many people that just see him, because I've translated for so many scientists and so forth, who have to spend 5 days with him, 25 hours. And in many cases they come away with, he's a really nice man. He's a really nice man, Really nice man, I really liked him. And that's what they got. And I'm not speaking with condescension. That's what they saw. It'd be like looking at a 5-year-old, oh, you're so stupid, you're 5 years old. That's not, why do that? That's what they saw, right? And other people, like Kandula, looks at him and she sees him as the thousand-armed Shenrezi, beaming light in all directions, right? And then there's all the people in between, And then there's Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche, coming in and giving teachings to His Holiness Dalai Lama and Dzogchen. And His Holiness prostrates to him, and he prostrates to His Holiness. What are they seeing? When Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche looks at His Holiness Dalai Lama, what's he seeing? When His Holiness Dalai Lama looks at Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche, what's he seeing? And the answer is beyond our pay grade. Can't even imagine imagining it. So let's not pretend that we can, and not assume that the way they actually are is the way they appear to us. Because that would be certainly false. If we want to be certain about something, be certain that's not true. That the Dalai Lama that comes to your mind exists in your mind and nowhere else. Painted with your colors, right? And the mind of the Dalai Lama that exists in the mind, or existed in the mind of Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche, that's Dingo Rinpoche's masterpiece of the Dalai Lama as he appears in his mind, and vice versa. Going both ways. So it's delicate, yeah? That's what I really want to get. That let's not be stupid and just assume whatever anybody says must be true because let's have pure vision. That's silly. That's just stupid. But let's not be pompous, thinking we can imagine what we can't imagine. Okay? Yeah. Molto bene. See you later.